This video is the extension of our video on Aristotle's forms of government and dives into details of polity. Imagine a society where power doesn't reside solely in the hands of the few or the many or the single ruler. Back in the first millennia BCE, Aristotle, based on his observations and studies of different societies of the time, thought of a system called polity, a form of government that aimed to harmonize different elements of society. Let's cover some basics first. In his work Politics, Aristotle discusses three good forms of government and their corresponding deviant forms. First, monarchy, rule by one for the common good, versus tyranny, rule by one for personal gain. Second, aristocracy, rule by the few for the common good, versus oligarchy, rule by the few for personal gain. Third, polity, a mixed form of government combining elements of democracy and aristocracy for the common good, versus democracy, rule by the many for personal gain, often leading to demagoguery or to mob rule ochlocracy. Right or wrong, Aristotle considered monarchy to be the best form of government in theory, as it could provide unified and decisive leadership. However, he also recognized that in practice monarchy was highly susceptible to becoming tyranny, which he viewed as the worst form of government. Aristotle also saw pure democracy and pure aristocracy as flawed, as in practice they tend to corrupt as well. So he ranked monarchy as best, tyranny as worst, aristocracy as second best, oligarchy as second worst. And in the middle he kept the democracy, seeing its pure form as nearly impossible, so the democracy was basically deviant from the start. But he still required participation of the majority of the people and a way to keep it pure. Therefore he proposed a balanced approach to achieve stability and the common good. Aristotle's vision of polity sought to combine the best aspects of democracy and aristocracy. He believed that the common good could be achieved by giving a voice to both the masses and the elite. This meant creating a system where the interests of the many were represented, but not at the expense of the wisdom and experience of the few. Polity, in essence, was about finding a middle ground, a delicate balance between competing interests. At its core, polity is a mixed government. It recognizes that different groups within society possess unique strengths and perspectives. The aristocracy, with its education and resources, could provide leadership and guidance. The common citizens, with their lived experiences and practical knowledge, could contribute to the decision-making process. Polity aimed to prevent any one group from gaining too much power. This required a careful distribution of authority and a system of checks and balances. The goal was to create a stable society where power was shared and different voices were heard. It was about achieving the common good, which would lead to stability and prosperity as an ultimate goal of a society. Aristotle thought that a well-governed polity would be characterized by justice, fairness, and the pursuit of what was best for all members of society, not just a select few. The echoes of Aristotle's polity can be seen throughout history. Let's find some examples. Perhaps the first that comes to mind. The Roman Republic, in the last century BCE, with its complex system of elected officials, that is, consuls with executive power elected annually, a senate representing the aristocracy, and popular assemblies for citizens, embodied elements of this balanced approach. Another example can be found even earlier, before Aristotle, in the Spartan constitution or the Great Rhetra in 7th century BCE. It was headed by two kings who led the military and religious ceremonies. But there was also the Gerousia, a 28-member council of elders that advised the kings and proposed laws. And there was the Ecclesia, or the Apella, an assembly of citizens older than 18 who could vote on proposals. Or how about the Athenian constitution, in 4th century BCE? Often celebrated as a model of direct democracy, it actually had elements of polity. The Athenian assembly, while open to all male citizens, still relied on elected officials and a council of 500 to propose and implement laws. Centuries later, after the Magna Carta in 1215, the English constitutional system, with its monarchy, House of Lords, and House of Commons, emerged as another example of a mixed government that sought to balance power and represent diverse interests. Let us now explore the Americas experiment. Could it be a modern polity? The United States, since its founding, has been engaged in its own experiment with polity. Even though popularly called democracy, the U.S. can also be seen as a polity in Aristotle's sense, as it blends elements of democracy, oligarchy, and even monarchy. Let's explain. The U.S. system, with its separation of powers, checks and balances, and representative democracy, draws heavily from the ideas of Aristotle and the historical examples that preceded it. The U.S. Constitution reflects a deliberate effort to balance the influence of different groups. The term Congress refers to the entire legislative branch of the United States federal government, which is bicameral, meaning it has two chambers, the House of Representatives and the Senate. The House of Representatives, with its proportional representation, gives voice to the will of the people. So, that's the democratic element. The U.S. Senate was originally envisioned to represent a more elite and stabilizing force, somewhat akin to an aristocracy. It was intended to be a smaller, more deliberative body, independent from the immediate pressures of popular opinion as seen in the House. The Senate, with 2 senators from each state, provides a check on the potential tyranny of the majority and ensures that the interests of less populous states are considered. Until 1913, the senators were not even elected directly by the people, but that was changed with the 17th Amendment in an attempt to make the Senate more responsive to the public and reduce corruption. The heavy influence of money in politics, the wealth of most senators, and their tendency to prioritize corporate or elite interests over popular demands suggest that the Senate has oligarchic tendencies. The presidency, with its executive powers, with the president holding significant power, offers a focal point for leadership and decision-making, gives it the monarchic element. Additionally, Aristotle believed a strong middle class is essential for a polity, as it prevents extreme wealth and poverty from destabilizing the system. The extent to which this holds true in the U.S. today is debatable given rising economic inequality. So who would know? The U.S. might have been made as an attempt to actually build a polity. We just don't think of it that way today, as the term democracy prevails being used left and right, mostly due to demagoguery at display. The U.S. story is perhaps too obvious. Let us explore the less known. We know that Gaddafi's Libya was destroyed by NATO forces under the pretense of taking out the brutal tyrant. But was it really so? Could Libya classify as monarchy and thus tyranny as per Aristotle's definitions, or was it something else? In the late 20th and early 21st centuries, could have Muammar Gaddafi's Libya presented itself as another attempt to actually create a polity? Let us examine this thought. Gaddafi's third universal theory, also known as Gaddafism, promoted a system he called Jamahiriya, or state of the masses. This system aimed to combine elements of direct democracy, socialism, and Islamic principles. It has similarities with the system of Yugoslav socialist self-management in Titoist Yugoslavia in 1960s to 1980s. It was also inspired in part by the Little Red Book of Mao Zedong, and its key provisions were documented in Gaddafi's Little Green Book. Based on this, Libya was turned into a utopian model state. The key governing elements were 1. The General People's Congress, GPC, which had representatives from different tribes, resembling a tribal aristocracy. Check. 2. Citizens could participate in governance through people's committees. Direct democracy. Check. 3. While not a king, Gaddafi ruled with significant power, balancing aristocracy and democracy. Monarchy-like element. Check. However, in practice, Gaddafi's rule became more centralized over time, in an effort to keep the tribe leaders, oligarchs, under control, and consequently, the true democracy was limited. While in the U.S., political power is influenced by corporations and lobbying, a form of oligarchy that Aristotle might criticize, in Libya, power was shaped by tribes and revolutionary ideology. Either way, a system that merely pays lip service to popular participation while concentrating power in the hands of a single ruler or a select few is not a true polity. True polity requires a genuine commitment to shared power, a respect for diverse viewpoints, and a willingness to compromise. It demands robust institutions that can effectively check the ambitions of any one individual or group. Most importantly, it necessitates a culture of civic engagement, where citizens are active participants in the political process. As we navigate the complexities of the 21st century, Aristotle's concept of polity remains relevant as it emphasizes the importance of balancing different elements of government to achieve stability and the common good. While historical and modern examples show varying degrees of success in implementing this ideal, the core principles continue to inform discussions on governance and political stability. Polity, with its emphasis on finding common ground, fostering dialogue, and balancing competing interests, offers a timeless framework for addressing the challenges of governing. By learning from both the successes and failures of past attempts to create a polity, we can strive to build more just and prosperous societies for ourselves and for generations to come.